Why do some people get under your skin? Why do certain behaviors make your blood boil while others barely bother you? The truth is, what disturbs us in others often points toward something hidden within ourselves. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." The moments when we feel anger, judgment, or disgust are not just about the other person. They are mirrors reflecting parts of our own inner world. When you find yourself strongly disliking someone, it might not be about them at all. It might be about the parts of you that you've refused to see. Each person carries an image of who they believe they are. We tell ourselves stories about being kind, fair, strong, or patient. These stories help us feel stable and good about ourselves. Yet behind the image we show the world, there is another side, one that contains everything we prefer not to see. Carl Jung called this the shadow. It is not a dark monster or a curse. It is simply the collection of traits, impulses, and emotions we reject because they do not fit the version of ourselves we want to believe in. From a young age, we learn what is acceptable and what is not. We are praised for being polite, obedient, or hard-working, and we learn to hide traits that bring criticism or shame. Anger, pride, envy, or selfishness are pushed down, buried in the corners of our mind. Over time, these denied parts form a hidden personality that still lives within us, even if we pretend it doesn't exist. Jung said, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." In other words, what we ignore only grows stronger beneath the surface. The shadow influences our choices and emotions in subtle ways. It can show up as sudden irritation, defensiveness, or judgment. It can make us feel uneasy when someone displays a trait we secretly disown in ourselves. For example, a person who hides their own ambition might feel threatened by someone who is confident and assertive. Another who denies their anger may be deeply disturbed by anyone who expresses it openly. We think we are reacting to others, but often we are reacting to a reflection of ourselves. The hidden side is not made only of traits we label as bad. It can also contain positive qualities that we never developed or were told to suppress: creativity, confidence, or independence. These are the parts of ourselves that wait to be rediscovered. When we ignore them, we feel incomplete, as if something inside us is missing. Jung believed that becoming whole requires acknowledging both the light and the dark within. He said, "I would rather be whole than good." Facing the shadow is uncomfortable because it challenges the image we have built of who we are. It asks us to admit that we are not as pure, patient, or perfect as we wish to appear. But honesty is the beginning of growth. When we stop pretending to be only our best qualities, we begin to understand our full humanity. We learn that the shadow does not make us broken. It makes us real. The hidden side is not meant to be erased or destroyed. It holds valuable energy that, once recognized, can be transformed into strength, creativity, and wisdom. The traits we reject often carry lessons we need. Anger can teach us about boundaries. Envy can point us toward our true desires. Fear can guide us to what matters most. When we bring awareness to the shadow, it no longer controls us from the dark. It becomes a source of clarity and self-understanding. In every person lives a conflict between the image they want to be and the person they truly are. The work of growth begins when we stop hiding from that truth. To look at your shadow is to step into an honest relationship with yourself. It is to recognize that the parts you hide are still you, still human, still worthy of being understood. Only then can you begin to live with authenticity and peace. When we cannot face certain truths about ourselves, the mind finds a way to keep them hidden. Yet those hidden parts still seek expression, and one of the most common ways they emerge is through projection. Carl Jung described projection as the unconscious act of attributing our own denied feelings, motives, or traits to someone else. It is as if the mind holds up a mirror, but instead of realizing we are looking at ourselves, we believe we are seeing another person's flaws. Projection often begins quietly, almost invisibly. We might meet someone and instantly dislike them without a clear reason. Something about their behavior, tone, or attitude stirs a reaction inside us. Instead of asking why we feel that way, we decide that the problem is theirs. They are arrogant, we might think, or they are selfish. Yet if we pause long enough to examine the feeling, we might discover that we too have those qualities somewhere within us. Only we have pushed them out of sight. Jung explained this process clearly. Everything that is unconscious in ourselves we discover in our neighbor, and we treat him accordingly. The reason projection happens is simple. The ego wants to protect its image. We want to see ourselves as good, reasonable, and in control. Admitting that we carry negative emotions like envy, pride, or bitterness feels threatening. So the mind shifts the discomfort outward. It tells us the problem is out there instead of in here. By doing this, we preserve our self-image but lose sight of the truth. The more we deny what belongs to us, the more we fill the world with our own reflections. Projection creates a distorted view of reality. We start to believe our judgments are objective truths, when in fact they are colored by our inner conflicts. Someone's confidence might seem like arrogance to us because we secretly wish we could be more self-assured. Another person's independence might feel like coldness because we fear being alone. The irritation we feel toward others often says more about our own insecurities than about who they actually are. Jung wrote, "The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate. What we refuse to see within ourselves returns to us through the people and situations that provoke us." Recognizing projection requires humility. It asks us to question our own perceptions instead of assuming they are accurate. When you find yourself strongly disliking someone, ask, what quality in them disturbs me so much? Is it possible that this same quality exists in me, even in a small or hidden way? The answer is not always comfortable, but it is freeing. Each time you bring a projection back to yourself, you reclaim a piece of your lost awareness. You take back energy that was trapped in judgment and turn it into understanding. Projection can also explain why people repeat certain conflicts throughout their lives. When the same types of people keep appearing to frustrate or hurt us, it may be a sign that there is something unresolved within. Until we recognize what the pattern reveals, life keeps presenting us with similar mirrors, hoping we will finally look into them. Jung compared this to the outer world acting as a reflection of the inner one. The people who irritate us are not placed there to punish us, but to teach us something about who we are. The moment we become aware of projection, it begins to lose its power. Awareness interrupts the cycle. We start to see others more clearly, without the fog of our own denied emotions. Instead of judging, we become curious. Instead of reacting, we begin to reflect. This shift transforms relationships and brings peace to the inner world. Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." When you recognize your own capacity for pride, anger, or fear, you stop needing to condemn it in others. You see their struggles as human, just like yours. Projection is not a flaw. It is a signal. It points toward the places inside us that are waiting to be understood. Every time we catch ourselves judging, we are being offered an invitation to turn inward. When we accept that invitation, we begin to live with greater honesty. The outer world becomes less of a battlefield and more of a classroom for self-knowledge. What once angered us now reveals something meaningful. The mirrors we used to hate become tools that help us see. In learning to recognize projection, we take the first real step toward self-awareness. We stop running from the parts of ourselves we fear and begin to integrate them. The act of seeing through projection is the act of reclaiming ownership of our inner life. It is the quiet, powerful moment when we realize that what we fight in others has been inside us all along, waiting to be brought into the light of understanding. Emotions are not random. They do not rise and fall without meaning. Each strong reaction we experience is a message, a signal pointing toward something hidden within us. When we feel intense anger, irritation, or resentment toward someone, it is easy to believe that the cause lies entirely outside ourselves. We tell stories that justify our feelings. They are the problem. They made me feel this way. But Carl Jung taught that our emotions, especially the uncomfortable ones, are mirrors reflecting what we have not yet faced in our own inner world. Emotions reveal the truth faster than thoughts ever can. The mind can disguise, rationalize, or deny, but the body reacts honestly. A sudden tightening in the chest, a rush of heat, or a sharp wave of discomfort. These are signs that something deeper has been touched. These reactions are not enemies to suppress. They are clues waiting to be read. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Emotional triggers are moments when the darkness calls for attention, asking to be understood rather than rejected. When we feel a strong emotional pull, the most valuable question we can ask is not, "What is wrong with them?" but "What is this showing me about myself?" Perhaps the irritation points to a part of us that feels insecure, unheard, or powerless. Perhaps the anger hides a desire we have long denied. Every emotional reaction has a story behind it, and that story often begins within. The emotions that disturb us most are the ones that hold the greatest potential for self-discovery. Learning to use emotional reactions as clues requires slowing down. Instead of reacting immediately, we can pause. In that pause lies awareness. In that brief moment, we can choose to observe the emotion rather than be consumed by it. We might ask, "What exactly am I feeling right now? Where is it coming from? Is this feeling familiar? When have I felt this way before?" These questions turn the reaction into reflection. Over time, we begin to see patterns, certain behaviors or words that consistently stir the same feelings. Each pattern is a map leading to something we have not yet made conscious. Our emotional reactions are shaped by what we repress. If we were taught that anger is unacceptable, we might overreact when someone else expresses it freely. If we fear failure, we might judge others harshly when they take risks. These emotional responses are not logical. They are echoes of the past. They show where our understanding of ourselves is still incomplete. Jung believed that facing these emotions is essential to growth, because what remains unconscious continues to influence us without our consent. Emotions also reveal values. The things that deeply upset us often point to what we care about most. Feeling angry at unfairness might reveal a deep inner value for justice. Feeling frustrated by dishonesty might reflect our own longing to live with integrity. In this way, emotional discomfort is not always negative. It can be a guide toward what is meaningful and important to us. By observing what stirs us, we gain insight into both our wounds and our ideals. Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Emotional awareness can be uncomfortable because it exposes contradictions within us. We might discover that we criticize in others what we secretly desire, or that we resent what we fear becoming. These realizations can feel painful, but they also bring freedom. Pain is the sign that something hidden is being brought into the light. The moment we recognize the source of our emotional reaction, it begins to lose its power to control us. To use emotions as clues does not mean denying their intensity. It means understanding them instead of obeying them blindly. Anger, envy, and frustration can become teachers if we listen to them with honesty. They reveal where our boundaries lie, where our insecurities live, and where our growth is waiting. Each emotional trigger becomes a small door leading inward toward greater self-knowledge. Over time, awareness transforms reaction into response. The person who once angered us becomes less of an enemy and more of a mirror. The situations that once made us feel small begin to reveal our hidden strength. We learn to see every emotional storm as an invitation to know ourselves better. Jung believed that the path to self-understanding runs through the landscape of our emotions. When we honor what we feel instead of fleeing from it, we step closer to becoming whole. In truth, emotions are not problems to solve. They are messengers to understand. They whisper, they shout, they repeat themselves until we listen. And when we finally do, we discover that what we thought were signs of weakness were actually signals of awakening. Emotional reactions are not proof of our flaws, they are proof of our depth. Each one, if faced with honesty, brings us nearer to the person we truly are beneath the masks of pride and defense. Honest reflection is one of the hardest yet most transformative acts a person can undertake. It asks us to stop blaming others and begin looking inward. It demands courage, the kind that doesn't shout but quietly faces uncomfortable truths. Carl Jung believed that true growth happens when we are willing to turn our gaze inward and confront the parts of ourselves we have ignored. He said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." Honest reflection is the awakening he spoke of. To reflect honestly means to step beyond self-protection. It means looking at our thoughts, motives, and reactions without the filters of justification or pride. Most people avoid this because it can be painful. It reveals contradictions between who we think we are and who we actually are. It shows us that our kindness sometimes hides a need for approval, that our patience sometimes masks fear of conflict, that our confidence sometimes covers insecurity. But facing these truths does not weaken us, it strengthens us. The moment we see ourselves clearly, we stop being ruled by what we refuse to admit. The process begins with stillness. We cannot see our reflection in turbulent water. In the same way, we cannot understand ourselves while caught in emotional noise. Honest reflection requires quiet, moments when we are not distracted, not performing, not defending. It can be as simple as sitting in silence after a difficult conversation and asking, what was really going on inside me? Perhaps we felt dismissed, jealous, or afraid of being wrong. By naming these feelings, we begin to take ownership of them. Reflection is not self-criticism. It is not about judging ourselves as good or bad. It is about becoming aware. Awareness is gentle but powerful. It does not punish, it illuminates. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Honest reflection is how we make the unconscious conscious. It turns the unseen patterns that shape our reactions into knowledge we can work with. Many of our emotional struggles come from avoiding reflection. When we deny responsibility for our reactions, we project blame outward. We believe that others are the source of our frustration. But reflection turns the focus inward and asks, what in me was touched by this moment? This question changes everything. It shifts us from a position of helplessness to one of power. We can't control other people, but we can understand our responses to them. With that understanding comes freedom. The value of honest reflection also lies in its ability to reduce emotional repetition. Without reflection, we relive the same frustrations again and again. The same types of people seem to anger us, the same patterns appear in our lives, and we wonder why nothing changes. But when we reflect, we begin to see the thread that connects those moments. Perhaps each one is calling attention to the same hidden wound or the same unacknowledged fear. Once recognized, that pattern begins to dissolve. Awareness breaks the cycle. Honest reflection also nurtures humility. It reminds us that we are complex beings, capable of both kindness and cruelty, wisdom and ignorance. This humility softens our judgment of others. When we see how easily we deceive ourselves, we become slower to condemn. We begin to replace criticism with curiosity. Instead of saying, "They are wrong," we start to ask, what might they be struggling with? Understanding ourselves opens the door to understanding others. Another gift of reflection is emotional balance. When we react without thinking, emotions can take control of us. But reflection introduces space between feeling and action. In that space we find choice. We can choose to respond with calm instead of anger, with understanding instead of defensiveness. Jung viewed self-awareness as the foundation of maturity because it allows us to act consciously rather than impulsively. Each moment of reflection strengthens that ability. To reflect honestly is to walk through the inner landscape of your own mind and acknowledge what you find there, both the beautiful and the unpleasant. It requires patience. Some truths emerge slowly after many quiet moments of questioning. Others appear suddenly, like light breaking through clouds. Either way, each realization is a step toward wholeness. Jung believed that wholeness comes not from denying our flaws, but from integrating them into our understanding of who we are. The practice of reflection transforms the relationship we have with ourselves. Instead of being strangers to our emotions, we become observers of them. Instead of running from discomfort, we begin to listen to it. Over time, this builds a deep sense of stability. When you know your own patterns, you are no longer easily shaken by the behavior of others. You begin to trust yourself because you have faced yourself. Honest reflection is not a one-time act. It is a lifelong habit. It is how we continue to grow long after we believe we already know who we are. It turns mistakes into lessons, conflict into insight, and discomfort into self-understanding. In reflection, we meet the full range of our humanity and discover that even our contradictions have value. To reflect honestly is to live truthfully. It is to walk through life with open eyes and an open heart, no longer afraid of what we might find within. It is to understand that the journey inward, though uncomfortable, is the only path that leads to genuine peace. And as Jung reminds us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Yet once we do, life becomes clearer, our reactions softer, and our choices more deliberate.